It's not what our authorities should be thinking about or officials, but rather they should think about the nation.
The Breakfast Show with Awuah.
Monday to Wednesday from 8 a.m. on GN Radio.
Abusiafo yɛde dwumadie foforɔ ɛbrɛ mu wɔ GN Radio. Your friend of worship and inspiration every Sunday evening between the hours of 7 and 9 p.m. Daniel Kweku Datson and Amanda Ofori at this Ajumedie Ebro. Make sure that you tune in. It's going to be an awesome moment of worship, God's word, conversation, gospel celebrity interviews, Bible knowledge, and what have you. And also your comments. I want to hear from you, your testimonies, what inspires you, and a lot more. Make sure say on Mrs. our program every Sunday evening at GN Radio. Worship and inspiration. Your weekly inspiration starts from here.
The world as we know it has changed, and so have the issues affecting our community.
COVID-19 and the geopolitical tensions have really made it abundantly clear that the African continent has to do more to be self-sufficient from an industrial capacity point of view.
Join me, Awuah, on GN Breakfast Show as we look at issues affecting us here in the UK, with a close eye on trending stories across the world.
When we invest from the UK into infrastructure in African countries, that it is absolutely transparent.
With a focus on Ghana's social and political issues.
I mean, it's not about you thinking about your money, the Sikadia Basa is not what our authorities should be thinking about or officials, but rather they should think about the nation.
The Breakfast Show with Awuah.
Monday to Wednesday from 8 a.m. on GN Radio.
Welcome back to the show. This is GN Radio Morning Breakfast Show with myself, Jones Awuah. We're here till 10 a.m. this morning, so do get involved. If you're watching us live on Facebook, of course, the subject matters are already on there, so do get involved. Let's hear your take on it as well. Now, I came across one particular article which was posted, I think is it Graphic Online or Ghana Web? Anyway, one of these publications, right? One of these platforms. And I think a lot of the times we tend to forget, and I mean, I'm coming up to my argument. This is to do with tribalism, by the way. And as an ethnic minority here in England or in the diaspora, and I would try to link that with the story of the young man that was murdered on the streets in Italy, not necessarily with the murder, but the reaction, because the black community there are pushing for justice, because the Italian government trying to move away from it being a racial attack, trying to say that the motivation behind the killing, the strangling of the man had nothing to do with, it being a racial incident at all. And I'm just bringing this back to tribalism because I find it a bit interesting. I knew it was there because, we talk about this all the time. But to actually come across this article just hit home how prevalent it is within our community. So we're here already, we're facing an uphill. When I say we, I mean the community. As an ethnic minority, right? So we do our best, and if there's anything against another ethnic minority, being somebody of African descent, then we're quick to support them, to give them our full support. I mean, look at, for instance, Black Lives Matter. And I'm sure, I don't know, but I would suspect that majority of people people of ethnic background have experienced discrimination one way or the other, whether it's getting on the bus and nobody sitting next to you because of the color of your skin, or in your workplace, or wherever you find yourself out and about on the streets, going to the shopping mall, going to the shops. I mean, one way or the other, you found yourself being discriminated against, consciously or subconsciously. And then we try so hard, okay? We try so hard to fight against this, what I call oppression, because it more or less stops us from progressing. But then when we come to we come to our respective countries or our tribes or our clans, you realize that, or even just countries, right? Somebody from Ghana will have something negative to say about Nigerians. Nigerians will have something negative to say about Ghanaians. Kenyans will have something negative to say about Tanzania. Tanzania will have negative. I mean, vice versa. And I wonder, I mean, you've got that. You've got countries, other countries, that discriminatory, okay, going on, discriminatory comments going on. And then within their own country, then it comes to tribes. So let's use Ghana, for instance. You have the, I would say the Akans, then you have the Guns, you have the Ewe, the Gomba, whatnot. And you realize that tribalism is endemic within our society. So then on one hand, when you step outside your tribe, and because when you step outside your tribe, to somebody from a different national to you to yours, you're not referred to as representing your tribe. So for instance, I would not be referred to as an Akan. I'll be referred to as a Ghanaian. This is what is so interesting, right? You represent your country fully fledged. But then within your country, then you refer to yourself as your particular tribe that you're from. And then when you step out of your country and you step out of your tribe and you're being represented as the country of origin or national, you're fighting. I'm talking about people in the diaspora here, and I hope I'm making sense. You're fighting against the discriminatory measures put in place to more or less to stifle your progress wherever you find yourself. But then when you go home, you become the oppressor, using your tribal heritage, using your tribal lineage to stifle another person's progress from a different tribe. And it happens, this is not just peculiar to Ghana. I mean, you speak to Nigerians, they say the same thing. You have Yorubas, you have Igbos, you have the Hausas. I mean, you name it. Kenya too, the same. And it's interesting. I find it's interesting. And you realize, I think it's probably just down to human nature. I don't know. I know that a lot of the clashes between ethnic groups, pitting one group against the other, was socially engineered during the colonial era. Okay, I know that as well. But then you realize that it's a bit like the animal story, isn't it? The animal farm, sorry, the animal farm. And if you look at how the US, and it sounds like I'm digressing, but I'm not. I'm arriving at a point very, very soon. even the makeup of the US, how the US started, how the US were under the British Empire. It was a former British colony. Then during the Revolution War, deposed of its colonist, right? And then you would think the US opposing empire, opposing the monarchy, will take a different route. Then the US in itself became an authoritarian figure, gaining empires or becoming an empire, sorry. And then because they don't like the idea, changed it to territory. So then, after the Spanish War in the 18th century, then, the US takes over Cuba, the Philippines, and then other small islands around the Western Hemisphere. It's the same thing. We're here fighting for equality, but then within our own society, we're doing the same thing to other tribes who we feel or see them as a minority. And it just baffles me. That's all. It just baffles me. It's mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. It's interesting how human beings are wired, or how we think, how we work. On one front, we're fighting against the oppressors. On the other hand, we are the oppressors. Anyway, as I did mention, if you want to contribute to the show, you're more than happy to come on. I welcome you. Actually, I welcome your thoughts. I welcome your comments. And it's 0203-735-8820 or 0203-286-0185. Alternatively, you can call or text on the mobile line 077-8793-9958 are the numbers you need to call in. Coming up very, very soon, Julius Belito will be joining us to look at the upcoming elections in Kenya, which will take place tomorrow. So Julius will be joining us from 9 o'clock. All right, then. A text has just popped in. Let me just read this text. Okay, a couple of text messages as well. This is from Eric. Eric is saying, Jones, I totally agree with you. I don't get it either. We're so quick here to fight against discrimination, but within our own community, we discriminate amongst ourselves. I don't understand it either. This is from Rita. Rita is saying, I totally agree with you, Jones. I don't understand it either. We're here. I've suffered racism a lot, and I try so hard not to replicate the same thing within my community. But I do see it happening. It does happen. I mean, it does happen. It's strange how we're wired. Okay, it is very, very strange. And then the funny thing is, we discriminate against each other within our own society. But then when we come out of our society, that small community group, we tend to come together for the greater good, for the greater cause, because we've now become the oppressed, fighting against the oppressors. Anyway, so let's look at the newspaper headlines here in England. Voters, cost of living fears and drought days away. Okay, so let's begin with the Times. A number of Monday papers I should begin with. The Tory leadership rivals clashing again over the economic plan. So the leadership contest between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will dominate a lot of the newspaper headlines today. And looking at polls have indicating that Liz Truss is in line to become the next prime minister. The Times quotes a YouGov poll that suggests 2/3 of voters believe the government will be wrong to prioritize tax cuts over tackling the cost of living. Let's look at the eye. The eye says drought days away as England dries up. Crikey. The eye newspaper also reports on cost of living plans, saying that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak's support pledges will decide who wins the leadership race. Meanwhile, the paper says that a drought could be officially declared within days as a 10-day heat wave begins with temperatures reaching 35 degrees Celsius in some areas. Oh gosh, not another heat wave. A couple of weeks ago, I did an interview with a young man from Ghana, and I think it was here on GN Radio, and I've forgotten the. Anyway, it was a life insurance interview that we did. You know, the product they were selling was life insurance product, and I think it was called Aquintupa. Okay, so there I go. I'm also, you know, still giving them the plug, and he's just come from Ghana. And then, you know, in our conversation, I was asking him before we came on there, I was asking him, you know, what he thinks about the heat wave here. And he said, my goodness, it's too hot. And I said, yeah, but Ghana is hot as well. And he said, listen, the heat here, there's literally no breeze, right? Ghana, at least, there is some sort of breeze. And yes, Ghana, it gets hot, but not to the point where it's just humid and it's just stifling. And I thought, oh my gosh. So apparently, Ghana, the heat in Ghana is better than the heat here. Anyway, let's move on. The Daily Express, Truss, I won't rule out urgent help on bills. Liz Truss is considering making urgent payment direct to household battling the cost of living crisis. The Daily Express reports. The paper says Ms. Truss, former leadership rival Penny Mordaunt, confirmed the Foreign Secretary was looking at other measures. The Express also reports that a national hosepipe ban looms as temperatures start to rise again. Let's look at the Financial Times. The Financial Times reports that Liz Truss is under pressure to promise more help for poor households facing the crushing cost of living crisis this autumn, after expressing her preference for tax cuts over handouts. I think the pressure is, you know, her estimates are not adding up. And the Daily Telegraph. The Daily Telegraph leaves with a warning from the new health secretary that the NHS is facing a winter emergency and it will be too late to avert a crisis if action is delayed until a new prime minister is in post. Steve Barclay tells the paper that his department is in real sprint to get ready for September, and that decisions, including on hiring more staff from overseas, could not wait until a new prime minister is in post. Well, Boris Johnson is still the prime minister. What stops Boris Johnson, you know, from still carrying on his duties? Absolutely nothing. So I don't understand that. Okay, the Daily Mirror. Get back to sort crisis. So ex-Prime Minister Gordon Brown demands actions and the immediate recall of Parliament. The Daily Mirror reports that former Prime Minister Gordon Brown is demanding actions and the immediate recall of Parliament over the cost of living. Mr. Brown said Cobra Emergency Committee, and I quote, must meet daily to tackle the mess, the paper reports. And we do remember Gordon Brown. He was actually the prime minister at the time of the financial crisis, and you know, he's credited for his actions, the way that he was able to rescue banks. The Guardian says a leaked Ministry of Justice document shown to the paper suggests that Justice Secretary Dominic Raab is planning to curb judges' powers in a move likely to make it harder to bring successful legal challenges against the governments in England and Wales. The paper quotes Charlie Welton, policy and campaigns officer at Liberty, who says the document suggests that the government plans to make it even harder for people to challenge them and make themselves even less accountable to the public. The Daily Mail. the Daily Mail reports that calls from a cabinet minister for Tory MPs involved in an investigation into Boris Johnson over Partygate to quit the inquiry team. The paper says that allies of the Prime Minister attacked the kangaroo court probe by a Commons Privileges Committee into whether he misled Parliament or not. Look, and I mean, I'm not surprised that the Daily Mail is actually leading with this story because, you know, these are right-wing newspapers. They support the Conservatives, and you know, still a big fan of Boris Johnson. I don't understand why all of a sudden the Partygate scandal should be dropped, and the fact that Boris Johnson misled Parliament should all of a sudden be pushed back to the to be pushed back. Full stop. I don't understand. Clearly, they must know that Boris Johnson did mislead Parliament, and as such, you know, the investigation might go against the Prime Minister. Well, soon to be the former Prime Minister. Okay, the Metro. Trauma of 650 kids in police strip searches. The Metro leaves with a warning from charities that hundreds of children, some as young as 10, have been traumatized by police strip searches. The paper says that the Met Police did 650 intimate examinations, often without appropriate adult present, quoting figures from 2019 to 2020 unearthed by Children's Commissioner Dame Rachel De Souza. And finally, the Sun. The Sun leads with a warning from the fire chiefs who wants garden barbecues stamped out amid fears of another 40 degrees super scorcher this week. Well, that was in the final paper. The final paper is the Daily Star. And the Daily Star says that a water company has kicked up a stink by suggesting people stop showering and use a flannel instead amid drought warning. The drought of odor, the paper says. Absolutely no chance. Absolutely no chance. Can you imagine in this heat without having a wash, having a bath? I don't see how that's going to work. So that's the newspaper headlines here in England. We're taking a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at other stories, particularly across the continent of Africa. Don't go anywhere. Let me remind you once again to call into the studio. The number is 0203-735-8820 or 0203-286-0185. Alternatively, you can call or text 0778-793-9958. This is GN Radio Morning Breakfast Show with myself, Jones. We'll be back right after these short commercials.
Become a successful entrepreneur with Jackie and her professional team. Become a successful entrepreneur. Anase Base. Wami a team of professional teachers of economics, marketing. Ninga omuyebi. So pesa will transform your life from a youth graduate and a school leaver. Nasa pesa uye entrepreneur. Mon contacti Base. Entrepreneur no che say obia ebia wa business. Ebia uye che. But pesa uye no in a professional way. To say Oprah Winfrey. Anaya papa. Kwame Despite. Base. Bet mama sa Diano Abim. One your experts our coaching and a mentoring and as all person will start to our business base for bet show how our expand your business and as existing customer base provides support in business plans, step-by-step finance applications and marketing strategies. Base or become a successful entrepreneur also provide entrepreneurship skills through vision and determination. Some more per free consultation for a base
073-99867-417. I repeat, 073-99867-417.
And also our email address info@becomeasuccess.co.uk. Website www.becomeasuccess.co.uk. Mokohwa mubetimi make bookings for an appointment. Base and I said become a successful entrepreneur. Let's turn your vision into a reality.
The world as we know it has changed, and so have the issues affecting our community.
COVID-19 and the geopolitical tensions have really made it abundantly clear that the African continent has to do more to be self-sufficient from an industrial capacity point of view.
Join me, Jones Awuah, on GN Breakfast Show as we look at issues affecting us here in the UK, with a close eye on trending stories across the world.
When we invest from the UK into infrastructure in African countries, that it is absolutely transparent.
With a focus on Ghana's social and political issues.
I mean, it's not about you thinking about, your money, the Sikadiba size, not what our authorities should be thinking about, or officials, but rather they should think about the nation.
The Breakfast Show with Jones Awuah.
Monday to Wednesday from 8 a.m. on GN Radio.
Abusiafo yɛde dwumadie foforɔ ɛbrɛ mu wɔ GN Radio. Your friend Worship and Inspiration every Sunday evening between the hours of 7 and 9 p.m. Daniel Kweku Datson and Amanda Ofori at this dwumadie ɛbrɛ. Make sure that you tune in. It's going to be an awesome moment of worship, God's word, conversation, gospel celebrity interviews, Bible knowledge, and what have you. And also your comments. I want to hear from you, your testimonies, what inspires you, and a lot more. Make sure say on miss our program every Sunday evening at GN Radio. Worship and Inspiration. Your weekly inspiration starts from here.
Welcome back to the show. This is GN Radio Morning Breakfast Show with myself, Jones Awuah. The time now is 8:51. It is Monday, 8th of August, 2022. As I said last week, right? For me, as soon as it hits August, I'm just looking towards Christmas. So I hope you also did the same thing and planning ahead and planning accordingly, because we've seen what's happening right now. The living cost shot up. You name it, energy bills up the roof. So you need to plan really, really well. Plan accordingly so that you'll be able to get things that you need to get. Well, some of you might be thinking this is a bit early to talk about Christmas, but let me tell you, it is not, okay? It really, really isn't. All right, now let's turn our attentions to other stories trending across the continent of Africa. A London museum says it has agreed to return to Nigeria at artifacts looted in the 19th century from the Kingdom of Benin. So, yes, so the UK have decided, or the museum finally decided to return artifacts that were stolen in the 19th century from the Kingdom of Benin. The Horniman Museum said ownership of 72 objects would be transferred to the Nigerian government. Items include 12 brass plaques known as Benin bronzes, a brass cockerel, and a key to the king's palace. It follows a request by Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments in January. The museum in Southeast London says it has consulted with community members, visitors, school children, academics, heritage professionals, and artists based in Nigeria and the UK. And I quote them. They said, all of their views on the feature of the Benin objects were considered, alongside the provenance of the objects, the museum explained. End quote. The museum said, the museum's chair said it was, and I quote, moral and appropriate to return them. I mean, look, for this particular story, we've had debates upon this, right? Where some people think, look, there's no point, let them have it, let them keep it here and pay some sort of compensation for it, or to be able to give some money back to the countries they stole these artifacts from. Because some have argued, and this is not my position, by the way, this is some arguments that have come in. Some have argued that this will not be catered for, well looked after, if it's sent back to countries in Africa. And some of us have said, I mean, what's the point? This happened in the 19th century. That don't really care, but you should care, really, isn't it? Because these artifacts are actually, dare I say it again, the whole tribe, culture, tradition, identity, isn't it? I would suggest that whatever money, I know that a lot of these museums are, I don't know whether they're funded or charity, but a lot of these museums, you have to pay, right? You have to pay. And if it's a thing where these museums you have to pay to go there, then whatever money, I mean, they should pay some compensations, because they've earned a lot of money from this. It's not just on show for nothing. Let's look at other stories as well. Now, this is one story that is to do with politics, right? And it's interesting because I said this last week and the week before, when the Russian ambassador Lavrov traveled across Africa, where visited a few countries, right, to strengthening Russia's relationship with these countries in Africa. And alarm bells went off in my head. Suddenly there was a light bulb moment, like, hold on, what's going on here? I mean, if we look at what's currently taking place, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and some African countries abstaining from condemning Russia's actions against Ukraine, and the fact that the West is on the other side. When I say the West, particularly the G7, on the other side, condemning Russia's actions against Ukraine, and then Russia making a trip to Africa. Just off the back of Russia's trip to Africa, the U.S. also said that the U.S. Secretary of State will travel to African countries off the back of Russia's visit. And then I think it was Kofi Ali I was speaking to, and I said, do you think this is, the Cold War has ended, the Soviet Union is no more. Are we seeing, the whole communism versus capitalism here? The Soviet Union, well, now Russia, and also the West. Is this what we're seeing here? And Kofi Ali said to me, Kofi, if you listen, good morning. Kofi Ali said to me, listen, the Cold War is not over. So this is actually is interesting that it's happening, in real time. We're seeing it. Those of us that do follow global issues and with a bit of knowledge of history, we see this happening. So the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in South Africa on Sunday, which is yesterday, beginning his trip to Africa. That is widely described by the U.S. media outlets as a renewed effort to bring back allies and a revival of Cold War-style politics. Although in an attempt to counter the influence of China and Russia, the US is unable to form a new club to achieve its goal of containing the two countries. Considering the significant cooperation between China and Africa and Russia's deep engagement with the region, according to analysts. Besides, African countries like South Africa, which still have fresh memories of the Cold War and focus more on their domestic issues like economic recovery, excuse me, are expected to adopt a more balanced and pragmatic stance by avoiding picking side between major powers, they noted. Blinken is expected to deliver a major speech on Monday on U.S. strategy towards sub-Saharan Africa, according to U.S. media reports. Now, this is the second visit of the top U.S. diplomat to the region following his trip to Kenya, Nigeria, and Senegal back in 2021. And it is considered as playing catch-up to counter the growing influence of Russia and China in the region. So here we are, okay? We shouldn't close our eyes. we should keep our eyes open, peeled, I should say. I think Americans would say, keep your eyes peeled, all right? What is happening right now? And just a side note, for those listening to us on Tunein online, we're gonna take a quick break now. The conversation continues on our Facebook page, right? Well, so those of us that pay attention, listen to what's happening, in global politics, right? Interesting times ahead. Now, China and Russia on one side, both communist states, or you should say, both in favor of communism. And then you've got the US, the UK, and the allies on the other side. But now, during the time of the Cold War, the US was the superpower. Okay? The US and the Soviet Union, I beg your pardon. Both countries were, or should I say, for the Soviet Union, more or less an empire, isn't it? Were the superpowers. And although the Cold War was more of an ideological war, nevertheless, proxy wars did break out, the Vietnam War. So in the US's attempt to contain communism, as opposed to going out full-fledged war, boots on the ground, they decided to use a strategy called containment. So to contain communism, to stop it from spreading, the US actually gave a lot of, these third world countries to push the agenda of democracy. So at that time, the US were in a position to be able to do that and call on its Western allies to influence them, okay, to finally bring down the spread of communism. Mind you, the Ghana former president, the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, was considered a communist. Okay, no wonder he was brought down, he was overthrown. So that was the US, and it's still the US's policy. I don't know whether they'll go for containment, because the dynamics of the world have changed now. The superpowers, it's not just Russia or the Soviet Union and the US. You have China as well, and China siding with Russia. And now a lot of the African countries, if you look at Russia's invasion of Ukraine, actually standing their ground and not condemning Russia's aggression towards Ukraine, speaks volumes. It says a lot. And then recently, we had the Russian ambassador making the rounds across the continent of Africa. And then off the back of that, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, also went to Africa. And I think it was, we reported this last week. It was during his visit to Cameroon. I think, he was there with the Cameroonian president, Paul Biya, where he condemned African leaders for not condemning Russia's aggression towards Ukraine, calling them hypocrites. So there's something fundamental happening here right in front of our eyes. And with the influence of China across Africa right now, it will be very, very difficult to get the West, for the West to get, especially African countries, to support its mission. It would be really, really difficult. So interesting times ahead. We see how things unfold. Let's bring you other stories as well. I think probably after this story, we'll get Julius Baluto online. Now, protests have taken place in the affluent Italian town of Civitana Marsh after a Nigerian immigrant was beaten to death in the full view of the public with no one helping him. Alika Ogochukwu, that's the young man that sadly lost his life. Alika Ogochukwu's widow, Charity Oriki, has seen a video of the attack, which has been widely circulated. And to that, she says she couldn't watch it. Let's take a quick listen to this report.
Protests have taken place in the affluent Italian town of Civitanova Marche after a Nigerian immigrant was beaten to death in full view of the public with no one helping him. Alika Ogochukwu's widow has seen a video of the attack.
I can't watch it. I saw the video just when the boy was struggling hard, very, very hard. My husband was struggling like this. The boy was still struggling into death. No, that boy, I don't know what my husband did to him.
Police arrested a suspect but immediately ruled out a racial motive for the attack on Alika, who was a local street vendor with a history of mental illness.
Was there. I saw those people that is wearing Bianco cloth. Normally, if I saw them in news, in television, they'll lose or carry dead people. I said, these people, they are carrying dead people. Where is my husband? They said, I saw him there. He's already dead.
Black Italians are now demanding the authorities recognize the role race played in what happened to Ogochukwu, but locals have been internationally condemned for not intervening.
Any comment is superfluous because beyond the extreme action of a person that maybe wasn't in full possession of his mental abilities, which is something the prosecutors will investigate, the most shocking aspect is the total absence of an intervention by the people watching and doing nothing.
The Nigerian government has condemned Ogochukwu's death and urged Italian authorities to bring the perpetrator to justice.
Okay, so this is another story that really makes my blood boil. My thing is I'm very skeptical when it comes to dealing with the Italians. I'm really, really skeptical because we've seen their stance, okay? We've seen what they make of Black people, essentially. Especially immigrants. We've seen their stance against immigrants. We've seen how Black people have been treated in Italy. So for a young man, for a man to be being strangled in broad daylight and with no intervention, nobody going to help or even ask what has he done, to be left for another man to strangle him to death, and for the police to come out and say there was no racial motivation or motive, I should say, behind this murder, is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. One will only hope that the Nigerian government will persist to push this so that the family will get justice. And they have diplomatic ways to doing this, and the best way to do so right now is the fact that the U.S. ambassador across the continent of Africa making the rounds, and I'm not sure, is he visiting Nigeria? Or either way, Nigerians can do that because we know how powerful the US is and how the US can influence to make sure that, you know, justice is served. A lot of the times these stories get swept under the carpet and, you know, nothing happens and people go scot-free. I mean, I know Americans cannot intervene or interfere in domestic politics of Italy. Nevertheless, they have to, so that the family can get peace. So many times that these things have happened and nothing has come out. It's sad. It's really, really sad. Some of the things that a lot of our brothers and sisters go through, you know, when they find ourselves in a foreign land, is very, very sad. Being a migrant and being murdered in broad daylight and nobody helping, nobody coming to your aid. And then the government have the cheek to come out and say there was no, the motive had nothing to do with any racial actions. Anyway, you can call in 0203-735-8820, 0203-286-0185. Alternatively, you can send a text message to my mobile line on 0778-793-9958. There's a lot of text messages coming in. I will read your text messages as well. Just to remind you, we are streaming live on Facebook, so do go onto our Facebook page and leave your comments. Kenyans will go to the polls tomorrow, the 9th of August, 2022, to elect a new president. How are things faring? Joining us to discuss this is Julius Baluta, journalist, broadcaster here in the UK and for Colorful Radio. Julian has his own show on the Global Politics, which comes on every Saturday morning. I'm sure it's 8 o'clock, Julius, isn't it? Good morning.
Definitely it is. Good morning, Jonas. How are you?
Very well. Thank you. Good to see you. So yeah. if at all any of the candidates, Raila Odinga and Mr. Ruto, what do you think, in your perspective, Julius, that could potentially swing this presidential election one way or the other? Because my guess is Raila Odinga is favorite, all right? But it looks as if Ruto is really, really pushing, coming, you know, as the day approaches.
It's been a tough campaign, a very tough campaign. No one is just taking anything for chance. Both of them have really relentlessly campaigned across the nation. Of course, Ruto talking about the bottom-up economics in terms of focusing on the ordinary folks. But of course, when you come to Raila, he's telling Kenyans, number one, education is very important. From primary level all the way to university level, education will be free for all. And then he's talking about social welfare, whereby those who are vulnerable, they are going to be getting 6,000 shillings each month, so that no one is completely down and out. You know, so those are the two forces they are talking about. You cannot ignore the character in the game. Professor Wajakoya, he is a man talking about cannabis legalization and selling other items of an animal I don't want to dare ever go close to. So all this gaining momentum. But what I think is that definitely the share of vote that goes to Wajakoya, if it was to go to either Raila or Odinga, Raila or Ruto, definitely it will sway the vote, whether we like it or not. There's another man, the fourth man, also the fourth presidential candidate, Oh, they all definitely have their own following, even if it's just one person. That's still a following, you know. So, it's just a bit. But of course, when you talk about Raila and then Ruto, yeah, they're like the key people to watch. Of course, we wait. It's just tomorrow and the day after. Jonas, today in Kenya is a quiet day, you know. They've been campaigning over the year, you know, over all this year, right? Every day, flying with choppers across the country. But according to the law now, if you campaign today, you'll be disqualified.
Wow. So right now, this is the
That's how
time
serious
to,
it is. Today's a
to sit
quiet
back,
day.
reflect, and wait to see if your campaign has been successful or not in the coming days.
Yeah, I watched earlier today, Raila and his team, they just went for prayers coming out, and no one is daring to talk about politics today, because if you do, you'll be disqualified. And I quite like the current, electoral body. It's come out very strongly. If you were firing laws say you should have a university degree and you didn't, they disqualified you. No mercy, you know. And they're taking everything to every piece of legislation, to the extreme that, you don't mess up. So I'm really shocked to see politicians who are so clever in trying to throw some politics around any issues, them behaving today. They're so well behaved. They are praying for a peaceful election, which is really cool.
Speaking on that and the way politicians are behaving, what do you think? From the beginning of their campaigns to now that people were actually the citizens, Kenyans, are actually going to the polls, going to cast their votes, which will be tomorrow. How does this year's election or campaign compared to previous campaigns and elections, do you think, Julius?
James, there's no comparison. What happened was, if I flash back to 2017, right, last general election, the parties were really very well crafted together, conglomeration of different tribes and, different key personalities. And definitely you would say, yeah, when we look into Uhuru and Ruto, they are two immediate tribes, the Kalenjins and the Kikuyus. They were dominant, and without a doubt, they got the largest share of the government, the two. But it was different dispensation, because that time, that's the way people were organized. And when you look into NASA, President Uhuru and Ruto went through the Jubilee Party. Raila Odinga at that time went right through NASA. NASA brought together all other tribes that were not Kalenjin and Kikuyu. So you can see the interesting dimension there. But then here comes, Supreme Court nullifies the election because it was full of cheating and fraud, a lot of things done in fraudulent manner, especially, cooking up of frauds using technology. They talk about computer cheeks, messing up the election. All these games are playing a lot. But, when you look back now, it's totally different, because when Raila Odinga left his party, NASA party, and went alone, when President Uhuru Kenyatta left his party, Jubilee Party, and went alone to have a handshake with Raila Odinga, those parties were feeling betrayed, and they were torn, each of them were torn down the middle. And that disintegration of parties, which were so well crafted around the ideas of tribes, it's amazing. It's a blessing in disguise for Kenya, because this election, we are not talking about tribes, because when we talk about tribes, who are you talking about? Every candidate knows it's only relevant. They are relevant only if they are reaching out to all Kenyans. Because at the end of the day, even if you have tribe is 7 million people, and they voted only for you. The law requires you have to score probably at least 20% or 25% across 47 counties. Each county is inhabited by different tribes. So if you are not reaching out for those, again, your tribe cannot make you a president. And that's a very, very powerful thing that is playing out in this particular politics. So Kenyans are not talking about tribes. Look at it this way. What we saw, which was amazing, since in Kenya's independence, only 2 tribes have produced presidents since Kenya's independence. And that has been a very thorny issue because 2017, even there were talk, if those 2 tribes cannot relinquish power now, secession may happen. There was a map of a different country along the way of Kenya. That they were like, okay, stay there, we'll stay here, you know? And then for the first time, we had 2 presidents in one country. You know, when Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn, Prime Minister Raila was also sworn, and therefore we had 2 presidents and a map with 2 countries. So you can imagine how scary that can be. And then, you know, Jonas, the dimension is this is not just a few people. It's not like Nigeria and Biafra. No, we are talking about half. That's how serious it is, this one. So when that was a thing, you see now when after the handshake, President Uhuru even leaving out his Kikuyu tribe, telling them, it's about time for a president to come out from a different tribe, which is not my tribe, Kikuyu. You can imagine how powerful that has been.
I just want to draw your attention because the world is watching, the international body, international community, I should say, watching with a keen eye on Kenya's election. But what I do find staggering, Julius, is the level of negative press, especially from the West. You know, some media households. So let me just read a few to you. So, you know, if you go on Google now, okay, if you type in Kenya's election 2022, this is what comes up. So we have and I believe Al Jazeera is the press association, isn't it? Kenya 2022 elections, the most boring elections, Julius. The BBC, Kenya's election wrestling match, dynasties versus hustlers, BBC. The New York Times, the troubles of Kenya's China-funded train. Kenya's presidential election looks too close to call. Well, this is The Economist. So this is probably a publication that seems to be fair. It's an illusion of choice why young Kenyans are boycotting the election. This is from The Guardian. Meet the Kenyan president candidates campaigning on marijuana and hyena testicles. Sky News. Quoting the Kikuyu, Kenyan politicians split biggest voting bloc. And again, that was Al Jazeera. The New York Times, in the Kenyan election, a fierce battle to lead an African powerhouse. Well, so that's also more or less a positive one. A record number of women and running in Kenya's elections, but many face harassment and abuse. So, you know, I try to be a bit balanced, but you tend to see that the more negative narrative of Kenya is what is being propagated more, Julius.
In 2007, just immediately after post-election violence in Kenya, again following a disputed election, I watched with amazement immediate headlines hitting the world. I saw from the Western media, I could name about 3 media houses, international media, powerful media, quickly crafting the script of Rwanda. And therefore, they were like, oh, here goes again, genocide between Luos and Kikuyus. And let me tell you the foolishness of such a headline. Kenya has 47 43 tribes. One tribe could be with as many people as 5 million or even more. Now, when you look into demographic studies of Kenya, Luos and Kikuyus, they are not living next to each other. Actually, Central Province is where the Kikuyus live. Western Province is where you find Luos in terms of tribal origin. In between those two tribes, there are different other tribes. So even if they wanted to fight, other tribes are there as buffer zone. And therefore, I was actually shocked to see the ignorance of the Western media crafting a narrative talking about Tutsis and Hutus equivalent. Did you know Rwanda has only 2 tribes? It's not like Kenya. And it never will be the same. And you cannot talk about what happened in Rwanda to have it happen in a similar way in Kenya. Because let me tell you, we're all black people, right? Until someone speaks, you won't know which tribe they are.
Yes.
And therefore, how will it Luos chasing Kikuyus meeting about 10 tribes in between them? How will they know which is which? They can't. And therefore, the Western media works with scripts. They always look back. And they're always saying, what's going to be different this time? Or are we going back there? I can say, without fear of contradiction, Western media tends to be very negative when it comes to Kenya's election. I've seen wishy-washy kind of analysis being cooked up in the name of BBC, because you see, even Al Jazeera or all these other media talking with authority just because they are big media houses, and they're talking about countries, nations with their own independence, sovereignty, their own complicated procedures. You know, like talk about Kenya democratically. Kenya negotiated without war until they wrote a brand new constitution in 2010. All those issues that used to be problems in terms of controlling people and dictatorship, all thrown out of the window. So Kenya is very democratic as I'm speaking to you. This is something that the rest of the media is not focusing on. They are focusing on the potential for war. Yeah, and they forgot that democracy is what drives communities and political life is lived democratically. And when there's democracy, there's likely to be peace. Jonas, 2017, if there were Kenyans who would have fought, they would have done in 2017. But actually, it was Kenyans, the voters, the ordinary you and me, who will tell their leaders, hey guys, don't try to incite us. What we are saying, Supreme Court and annulled the vote. Go back, stand, we're going to vote for you. Don't tell us to fight. Still, so this is a narrative that actually is very important and is missing out in the equation when we see the coverage from the Western perspective. Quickly again on the same, 2017, because all these channels are used to the same narrative all the time. With this one journalist, I think she was from CNN, he went to Nairobi just before election. And the youths from one of the estate thought, let's play your narrative. So they started to shout a bit, burning some tires. And this journalist, oh, the war is beginning. Say, yeah, we're going to kill each other. Come and film us, you know. And they filmed it. Next thing we see a big headline, only later to find out these journalists were duped by young youths who knows what the Western media think. So it's about time, I think, journalism should be about facts. Journalism should be about responsibility. When I did the media studies in terms of academic, talk about media's got a very important role to play in any dispensation of our country. Media has power, and that power comes with responsibility. If a media can set an agenda The question I want to ask BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN, what kind of agenda are you setting? If you're an agenda setter for Kenya, what kind of an agenda are you setting? Is it an agenda for war? Is it an agenda for a journalist to gain fame, filming tires which mean nothing to Kenyans? So, you see, there are problems when it comes to coverage by the Western media, and it's very negative. Sadly, it's very negative. Sadly, I'm always thinking, you have resources to cover. There's media that doesn't even have enough resources. They're doing factual stories. They're doing a better job. Why can these Western big media houses use their resources to do stories, focus on the issues that matter? As a Kenyan, I just want to say, our focus is not war.
Absolutely.
Our focus is democracy.
Absolutely. Julius, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Always a pleasure talking to you, Julius.
Thank you. Nice one.
Yeah, so that was Julius Beluto, who's a journalist, a broadcaster. He has a show. He has his own show, Global Politics, Global Issues, I should say, on Colorful Radio. You can catch Julius on Saturdays, 8 a.m. I've made a few appearances on his show. Fantastic show. So, check him out. Right, now let's turn our attentions. I know that a few text messages are coming in about my discussions with Julius, but I'll come back to them in a moment. Let's bring you a few stories making the headlines as well. And former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo pardoned by Ouattara. President of the Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, has pardoned his predecessor, Laurent Gbagbo, who was facing 20-year jail sentence for political unrest. In a statement on Saturday to mark the 62nd anniversary of the country's independence, Ouattara said the move was in the interest of reinforcing social cohesion.
President of the Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, has pardoned his predecessor, Laurent Gbagbo, who was facing a 20-year jail sentence for political unrest. In a statement on Saturday to mark the 62nd anniversary of the country's independence, Ouattara said it was in the interests of reinforcing social cohesion. Ouattara also asked for Gbagbo's bank accounts to be unfrozen and for his life annuity to be paid. Gbagbo became president of the Ivory Coast in 2000, but was arrested in 2011 after refusing to concede defeat in the election. Civil conflict between Gbagbo's forces and supporters of Ouattara led to the deaths of around 3,000 people. Gbagbo was acquitted by the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes committed during the conflict. But in 2018, he was handed a 20-year jail sentence for the robbery of funds from the Abidjan Central Bank after the election. He's always denied the charges. Ouattara also agreed to release two of Gbagbo's closest associates who were convicted for their role in the post-election unrest. In 2021, after his acquittal by the ICC, Gbagbo returned from exile to the Ivory Coast and has kept a low profile since. Ouattara stood for a third term in the 2020 election, a move which critics said was unconstitutional. He's insisted that he won't exit politics until Gbagbo and his predecessor, Henri Konan Bedi, agreed to do the same.
Okay, so that was a report there from African News. Now let's bring you other stories as well, trending across the continent of Africa. Yes, keep your messages coming in, all right? And now we're also streaming live on Facebook, so you can check us out on Facebook. Now, elsewhere, Sudan is often viewed as a place of conflict, but the country also boasts unique attractions, from the confluence of the Blue and White Nile rivers to ancient temples and pyramids. Now, Sudan wants to exploit the huge tourism, or should I say tourist attractions.
Sudan is often viewed as a place of conflict, but the country also boasts unique attractions, from the confluence of the Blue and White Nile rivers to ancient temples and pyramids. And Sudan now wants to exploit the huge tourist potential.
He says we have a strategic plan for 5 years in which we try to develop all our tourist destinations to a high standard with really good facilities. The region boasts a rich history of civilizations and remains, including 3 times the number of pyramids in Egypt. But Dr. Mohammed admits Sudan has suffered from a negative image. We're working very hard to promote Sudan at the international fairs, he says, but we realized that many people know Sudan as a place of conflict, especially with the Darfur issue. But if we look carefully at Sudan, it's more than 1 million square miles, and the tourist destinations are thousands of kilometers away from the place of conflict. Among other attractions, Sudan is the site of Meroe, the ancient capital of the Kushite kingdom, where there are hundreds of Nubian pyramids. An increasing number of visitors are appreciating the region's potential and treasures.
I think it's nice to come visit these more remote, tourist locations. It's obviously a different experience from being in the Western world, where you would have crowds of tourists.
The first of the huge pyramids in Meroe was built by King Achaemenides I over 2,200 years ago. At its peak, the rulers of Meroe controlled the Nile Valley north to south over a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers. Excavations have revealed evidence of important high-ranking Kushite burials from the Napatan period between 800 and 280 BCE.
Tell you what, Sudan is actually a place I would like to visit. I really, really do, because of its history. There's so much to know about Sudan. Okay, let's move and look at what's also trending. This is Uganda. So, leading LGBTQ group in Uganda is closed down amid toughening laws. I mean, look, this is not only peculiar to Uganda, but I think Uganda is probably one of the first countries to actually implement very, very strict laws. Let's take a quick listen to this report.
Celebrations such as Uganda's Gay Pride event in 2015 are set to become a rarity in the country after authorities suspended the work of a high-profile LGBTQ rights group, calling it an illegal entity. Sexual Minorities Uganda has been the nation's most prominent support group for LGBTQ people since 2004, but its leader, Frank Mugisha, said on Saturday the authorities had told him to suspend activities due to a lack of documentation. He says the case against the group stems from the name itself, which the Registrar of Companies considers to be unsuitable. The judge agreed, and the group is awaiting the judgment of a higher court. Same-sex sexual activity is prohibited in Uganda under a colonial penal code from 1950, which criminalizes acts which are against the order of nature. The law carries a maximum penalty of life imprisonment and applies to both men and women. In 2009, President Yoweri Museveni's government drafted legislation which proposed the death penalty for what it called aggravated acts of homosexuality. After international condemnation, the bill was amended, but LGBTQ communities in Uganda are regularly subjected to discrimination and violence.
All right. So we'll continue to bring you more news updates, but for now, let's take our first caller. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Kofi.
Hello.
Kofi, we can't really hear you.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah, much better, Kofi. What would you like to say this morning, sir?
Yes, I think we've spoken a lot, and said a lot. I mean. And that there's an issue, I think it's an unfinished business that will want revisiting. And that has to do with the issue of, the so-called artifacts and the contentions and the hula balloons around it. I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Are you talking about the artifacts, Kofi?
Well, that's why I say the so-called artifacts.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yes, the artifacts. Yes. And I think the history here, like we see, democracy or politics about, democracy about wise people who know what they are doing, not those who don't know what they are doing. And I think it's the same thing with history as well. All right, well, let us go back and ask ourselves exactly what is the issue about. It's about items taken out of the African continent to the European continent. Is that not what the contention is all about? Good. Have you ever sat down and asked ourselves, what items are we talking about? Hello, sir?
Yes, I'm listening, Gobi.
Because the word artifacts doesn't explain anything. What are we talking about? We are talking about items that were on a land that were taken. Now, what are these items? We need to ask ourselves, and why were they taken? Artifacts can be art. When you say artifact, they are work of art. Is that not true? So people have sat down and made them. And after making them, somebody came and took them away. So these items that are taken away are not just items. There's something about them. What I could feel is that if they are ordinary items, right, why haven't we produced far more of them? You produce something, somebody take it away. You produce another one. Is that not true? If a chicken lay an egg,
I will come in.
If a chicken lay an egg and you take it, the chicken will lay another egg. You take the chicken will lay, at least you lay for a long time. These things are idols. They are not ordinary items. There are spiritual or superstitious relationship between the people and the items. We check some of them. They are really not a good sight to see. Now, let me give you a good example. Do you remember the golden stool in Ghana?
Yes.
Good example. Good example. What is this golden stool? Is the golden stool really from heaven? It's contentious. I'm not there. You are not there.
Sure.
But we were told there was, some noise, and then the fetish doctor, of course, everybody knows who Okonkwo-Anoche is, and the golden stool came from heaven. Now, when the golden stool came, who owned it? The king. It was still. So when the Ashanti are talking about the golden stool, you understand? They are talking about a stool that owned the land, the authority of their land. That's what they are telling you. And that stool owned Ashanti land, and the king sat on it. The king is the one sitting on it. But they told us it came from heaven, when we know there are gold mines all over the place and are goldsmiths all over the place. But they created a myth around it. So to create another golden stool, you understand, that will have the same status like that one. You need to have a spiritual activities around it for it to come into existence. Now, then one day some people came to you and conquered you. When they came, they realized that what is unifying you to fight them directly, attacking them consistently, is that power. They were able to see that you were defending the stool. So they decided after conquering you to take the stool away. Yeah? Fine. They're taking the stool away. Thousands of years have come. You generations have moved on. Is that the stool you are going to sit down, be crying, they should bring it back so that you can be able to make aeroplane? When they brought it to Europe, in different, so remember, there is an issue of conquering. As to whether you have liberated yourself is a different question. You don't even care anyway. Next question is that the thing was taken to Europe. In Europe, they then told their people that this item you show is what those people, those savages, that's what they worship. That is their power. We are powerful than them, so we've taken it and brought it here. Then people say, oh, we everyone want to see it. Why exactly it is. Is it really a chicken? Is it a dog head?
Gobi, looks like the line has dropped. I really want to have this conversation with you. So hang on. We'll try and send you a more suitable link, all right? So that you can be on here longer. Because it looks like this is not working. All right. So we're sending you a link now, Kofi, so we can talk to you, because I know that you've got a lot to say, and I want us to give you enough time to be able to get your point of view across. So if you just use what has been sent to you, we should be able to have you on a better, much better line. Kofi. All right, you can also call in 0203 735 8820. These are the numbers you need. 0203 2860185. Alternatively, you can call the mobile line on 0778 793 9958. So please use the link that we've sent you. Kofi, use that link that we've sent you. You should be able to come on, and it should be a better line, because for some reason this line keeps dropping. All right. Right now, Kofi is talking about the artifacts which were stolen from Nigeria, the Benin Kingdom, in the 19th century by Great Britain. Of course, Nigeria is a former colony of Britain. And Kofi, well, I think we've got Kofi back. Kofi.
Yes.
We sent you a link. Sent you a link. If you can use that link, I think that's more sustainable than
you give me a link.
Line.
Okay, I didn't see it. I'll go when I finish. When we finish, time is not on our side.
Okay, go on.
In the middle of it. You see, the reason why I'm doing this is that I have understood that we are so cheap in our thoughts and a bit lazy. There are more important things, but we are, for some reason, trapped in trivials. Now, look at it. When they brought those items to Europe, you understand, where else can you keep things like that than museum? Will you keep it in their own chief's compound? When they are with their own kings in Europe, they really saw that this is not. So they kept them in museums. You understand? This is a child, they put it in the zoo. They did that. We saw it. Do you understand? When they finish, then the next thing is people have to go to museum. And when you go to museum, you pay. Is that the money that is so attractive to us that we are head over tail that they should bring it to our place? We'll put it in our museum and our children will be watching it. So to me, I think we allow ourselves to be fooled, honestly. And I'll be honest with you. You go and check those activists behind this artifact and so you see that the French and the Europeans are behind it because they are getting us. If, for example, somebody conquer Germany today, is it not their technology we take away? Yes, if you conquer America, you take their technology away because that is their power. In our case, idols were taken away. And in this day and age, we have some hopeless people who are following these people to be giving them top money. When there are important things we should follow, how do we make aeroplane? Is that not part of our brain? How do we make the real nuclear facilities? Now there's electric car. That is not our problem. Oh. We don't even make toothpick. Oh. Our problem is to go and bring the idols that were taken 10,000 years ago back on our land. Some of them damn ugly. I saw them on the television. Very, very ugly. If we make them, they will let us do another one. Why do we go to them again? Then they give us some pound sterling and dollar.
Kofi,
so that is my take on this subject.
I've heard your argument.
Yeah, that's my take.
I understand and I appreciate your position. However, even in the UK, government fund archaeologists because the importance, we mustn't forget the importance of these artifacts. Especially cultural artifacts at that. Are very important critically to the study of human civilization at that particular time. And we cannot move away from that and to just simply say, it bears no importance or use to us right about now, we should just leave it. I think we'll be doing ourselves a disservice if we go down that route. Because right now, even I think a couple of weeks ago, the BBC spent a long time on a package. When I say package, I mean a report on what had been found somewhere in East London, going back many years. I think this was probably during the times of the Vikings, to discover what civilization was like at that particular moment. So why should African civilization or a country's civilization at one particular time to be overlooked, Kofi?
Yes, my answer is very simple. So we have finished finding the civilization and our history, what exactly happened to us in the past. We finished looking for them in Africa. Now it's in Europe, we are looking for our own. You just said East London. Oh. You didn't say they went to China. You said East London. That is what you just said. You see, we need to be very serious. Honestly, if you go to Ghana now and you see children on the street, 7-year-old child that sleeping on the street, 6-month-old nursing mother lying by the roadside in an infected gutter beside her. A 14-year-old girl, because of ordinary mobile phone, somebody has impregnated her. And this is not supposed to be what is important to us now. How can we make those basic needs of life that has become a norm now to be common to our children? That is not what we are talking about. Too. So when we take these things down, and then when we talk about history. If we can find history on the African continent, that big country, that's about 10 times the size of Europe. Is it in Europe we are coming to look for our what do you call that thing? What do you call that thing? Our history and our culture. And let us wake up and stop this thing. No? Our identity, our culture, you are the identity. As I look at you, you are the culture. The way you do things and how you do things is the culture.
During our previous conversations, I'm sure you can testify to the fact that I agree with your definition of culture, right? A way of survival. I understand that. But it's also important that these artifacts are sent back because we cannot forget. Because if these guys are making money off of it here, and
now how much money is
a lot of the countries right now, Sudan is thinking about its tourism sector. And of course, it is these historical artifacts that attract tourism. So if Britain is taking advantage of it or benefiting from it, from artifacts that does not belong to them, but artifacts telling the story from another country, then there's a problem because we should have these artifacts to be able to tell our story. Don't you think, Kofi? Looks like Kofi's line has dropped again. Okay, one quick story that I want to talk about. Just before Kofi came on, we were talking about playing the report of the LGBTQ protest, which was suspended by the government. Now, another story, okay? This is a bit worrying, concerning. Mali's government agrees to sign 26,000 ex-Northern rebels into its army. Okay, let's listen to this report.
Mali's government has said it'll integrate 26,000 ex-fighters from a northern rebellion group into its army as part of a deal with the former independence movement. The agreement was struck in a meeting on Friday between the two parties and suggests a new energy in the stalled reconciliation deal signed several years ago. The meeting was chaired by Prime Minister Chogo Kakalamayiga. Also attending the event was a special representative of the UN Secretary General and head of the peacekeeping mission in Mali, El Qasim Wane, and other ambassadors.
Well, sometimes you can't be enemies forever. And for the greater good, if this is what it would take to bring about peace, then they have it. All right. Hello.
Hello, sir. It's me again.
Yes, Kofi. Let's hear you.
Do you remember when Lumumba died?
Yes.
They took part of his body to
Belgium, yes.
Belgium, and then it was returned.
His tooth was returned.
You can understand that one. You see, I always say that there is no total truth and there's no total lies. You understand? There might be some reasons for sometimes to go back to other people other than yourself to try to address the concept of justice. You understand? And then sometimes it makes sense. But we should also be careful, totally careful. The way we are going, if it is the money they are getting from their tourist center, Do you know? My God, do you even kaya your money we make a day? Do you know how much it is? So why are we wasting our time on this one?
No, I'm talking about tourism, Kofi. Tourism. Not
so when we take it to Ghana now or Nigeria,
tourists who
the tourists who go to the one in Europe, they'll stop going and they'll start going to the one in Nigeria.
Here. And I'm sure Kayos also take place in other forms in other countries. But 2019, we saw the year of return and how much that's helped the tourism sector in Ghana, Kofi.
You see, we are not the only people who do tourism. Tourism is all over the world. Yeah?
Yes.
When you are counting the tourist industries, have you even asked yourself what the tourists eat in a country where 80% of what they consume is imported? Where does it come from? Have you asked yourself, when you are building hotels in Ghana, the raw material, the tools you use, where do they come from? Imported. You go to other countries, you see industries, for God's sake. Serious businesses. So now these tourists have become so important. Because of that, we come to Europe for them to give us part of their benefit of tourism, so that we take it to our zoo, our museum, and go and keep them there. We should even be asking ourselves, do you know on that African continent, our children cannot go to zoo because there's no zoo, we can't feed the animals. There are animals there. We can't catch them and put them in a cage and be feeding them because we can't feed ourselves. Hello?
I'm listening, Kofi. I'm listening to you.
Look, everything I don't know. Although some people are saying our race are different species, and I say no, they are all the same. There's just something about us that we are not addressing, and this is some of it. Simple things, simple, very simple. And then we'll be busy about trivials. Oh, so when we take everything from Europe, to then the hungry people over there will go and be watching it. You have to eat before you go to zoo. You have to eat before you go to museum to go and look. Go to Central London. You see them like rats everywhere. They are eating and going back, and the food is produced in the farm here from Tesco. Now you are our own. Where do we want it? Even when they are coming to look, how many of them go to our place?
But that doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, there are challenges everywhere. Domestic issues.
No, our own is chronicle. My brother, there is stomach problem everywhere.
That, museums should be closed, or the fact that there's higher abject poverty in the country doesn't mean that museums shouldn't be open. I don't think that is really important here in this discussion.
You see, it's very important. Since you said, the position of those who are saying they want these things, we're going to put them in museum and then to attract tourists. You understand? If somebody come and use Christianity to justify what I think is wrong, I will attack them and their religion. If you come and use Islam, I will attack you and your Islam. Because that is becoming the basis by which you are justifying the unjustifiable. So if in this case, you are using museum and tourism, so we don't deserve car manufacturing, aeroplane manufacturing industries. We don't deserve that one. Nuclear facilities industries. We don't deserve that one.
Yes,
we use electricity.
That one.
Why?
What makes you think we don't deserve?
Let's talk about that one. Why are you telling us to go and be talking about the remnant our ancestors created thousands or 2,000 years? It's like fighting over Jesus and Muhammad.
It's very, very important, because if it wasn't important, the Brits will not have it in a museum. We cannot move on and forget. Look,
I told you they conquered us. We didn't give it to them when they came.
But the importance of tourism cannot be overlooked. And a lot of the times when tourists come to this country in particular, you tend to find out that they go to the Science Museum, they go to other museums in London as well. Even Madame Tussauds, the museum there, these are things which are carved, let alone a historical artifact, actually telling the history of a particular country at a particular time in history. How is that wrong? I don't see the justification to say that this is wrong, because there's other needs that needs to be catered to, or other domestic issues that needs to be addressed. Nevertheless, the domestic issues will always remain, will always be there, and successive governments, it's up to them to come up with ideas and ideals to be able to deal with them. That doesn't mean the fact that these issues are still pending doesn't mean that having a tourism or trying to boost up your tourism sector is wrong, because the tourism sector is always very significant to the economy. And if your tourism sector, even look at Sudan, as I did mention, Sudan is a war-torn, is known as a failed, people say it's a failed state and so on and so forth. But even Sudan knows the importance of its tourism. So how is that different to any other country, Kofi? Okay, Kofi, I think the line has dropped again, but thank you very much for calling us always. Let's bring you this news. This is Ghana. Don't use only Ghana card. It can disenfranchise millions, according to Afari-Gyan, the former EC. The Electoral Commission EC's decision to use Ghana card as the only source document for continuous voter registration can disenfranchise millions of qualified electorate. The former chairman of the EC, Dr. Kojo Afari-Gyan, has stated. He said, with many Ghanaians finding it difficult to get their Ghana cards, making it only form of identification for voter registration was against electoral inclusivity, fairness, and justice. And I quote him, he said, Ghanaian citizens don't lose their citizenship if they are 18 years or older, but not have the Ghana card. So the moot question is, why make the Ghana card the only means of identification for purpose of establishing eligibility to register to vote? Dr. Afari-Gyan is answering. I'm sure this question, this topic would continue, and we'll probably touch upon it tomorrow. But for now, we're done for another day. I'm so sorry. Please accept my apologies for not being able to read your text messages that have come in. Nevertheless, the conversation still carries on our Facebook page. You can tell them I'm trying to speed up. I'm trying to speed up because I'm really, really pushed for time. Coming up next is the Legal Hour with Abinel Solicitors with myself, so don't go nowhere. The conversation continues on our Facebook page. We'll do it again simply same time tomorrow. Until then, it's goodbye.